We're actually just getting some detailed information from the Turkish justice minister, who says 10 people have died in this attack at the Istanbul airport. At least 10 people have died, other injuries as well. We know about, as we learn, that 2 people blew themselves up right in the departure area, and there were security guards there that exchanged gunfires with those 2 people. As we learn more about this, Rafi, you heard David Rhodes say that the U.S. and its airports doesn't face the same threat of someone coming in and launching a similar attack, or the same kind of risk as perhaps Turkey does. But what is your take on it? What risk does the U.S. have in this particular matter?
Well, I accept the conclusion that the level of threat here in American airports is lower, but at the same time we have to understand that the vulnerability of our airports to such attacks is also higher. The Istanbul airport, as we now know, everybody knows, they has been much better protected, and despite of that, we had this type of attack.
Looking at this situation in Turkey, what is your first reaction?
Well, I mean, this is a brazen attack. I mean, it's going to be the most guarded, most heavily guarded, most surveilled air passenger hub in Turkey. So to be able to attack it and to cause the carnage that they did suggests that perhaps Turkish security forces either were not as prepared, or intelligence was not as good as one might expect, or that these attacks are just simply extremely difficult to deter and to prevent in these passenger type environments. And it also sends a clear message to the Turkish government that whoever carried out this attack is prepared to go after any target in Turkey, anytime, anywhere, and is not going to be deterred by heavy security. And overall, inherently, that's bad news for stability and security in Turkey.
So what is the advice you would be giving to the likes of President Erdogan if you had his ear?
Well, I think it's not a matter of the advice that I would give. I think it's the concern that I have. When countries feel that they are under security pressure internally or externally, then the temptation is to centralize and to become more authoritarian. We have, of course, the West has already decried some of the authoritarian moves by President Erdogan, and I suspect that this attack will certainly not help to reverse those authoritarian tendencies, but rather that it will likely fuel the intrinsic reaction of a state that feels it is under threat to centralize and become more authoritarian. So this is bad news for democracy in Turkey, but it's also bad news from Western perspective, not only because it might fuel the authoritarian tendencies within Turkey, but any instability within Turkey cannot be in the interest of the West, given also in particular Turkey is, of course, a NATO member country, and so intrinsically there are effects that flow from this that are always beyond Turkish borders when these types of events happen within Turkey.
Christian Leprush, security expert, thank you very much indeed for joining us and sharing your analysis with us.
In Istanbul, where terror has struck once again, this time at the city's main international airport. You are looking at new video of the moment one of the explosions took place. A Turkish official says 2 attackers blew themselves up at Ataturk Airport after police fired at them. At least 10 people are dead, around 60 others presumed wounded. Okay, so this breaking news just coming in. Eric, right away what you think about is terror attack, who's responsible, who perhaps could claim responsibility for this?
Terror, another airport, Brussels, now Istanbul, Turkey. It's scary what's going on over there. I will tell you, so you watch this and you wonder, you know, people are pushing back on the Brexit vote and whatnot, but this is the reason why. There was supposed to be a lot of refugees that were coming from that part of the Turkey, that area, into the European Union. And so Great Britain says, you know, we're not ready for this, and we pulled back. And this is a little bit of a confirmation of what they did the last couple of days.
Well, I think you have to also factor in something a little bigger, which is that Turkey right now just apologized for having shot down a Russian plane. They're trying to renegotiate their relationship with Israel so they can start to ship oil and other goods around. And you also have to remember that the Kurds have a lot of complaints about what the Turks have been up to, and the fact that the Turks have not been supportive of them in terms of their efforts to go and reclaim their land and separate out in terms of what's taking place in Iraq.
All right. Yeah, Juan, you bring up a great point, because there has been a lot of conflict, you know, in that region, so we don't know specifically, you know, yet, obviously, because These reports are just coming in and are crossing on the urgent wires. Who might be responsible? This could be something more of a local, regional conflict and not something otherwise terror-related from ISIS or another group.
It could be. So it's hard to speculate. There's also speculation about what happened as to how the two bombers ended up being shot. Right? How did the security services know that they needed to be taken out? We don't have any of that information about what led up to it. We don't. Nobody knows. But we do know that there's a pattern. That there's a way to terrorize people, and that is to attack innocent civilians, especially international travelers, at a semi-soft target at international airports, because usually if you do that, then you're not just going to hurt people that live in Istanbul. You will hurt people from all over the world to try to make your message. That's what terrorism is to try to gain a political advantage using the attacks against innocent civilians.
And creating instability. And
happening weekly now.
All right, Greg, and also we had the new video that came in actually showing the moment that there was the blast, the detonation, and it appears, and Shepard brought this up, the video looked like it, and you see it right there, our viewers can see it. It appears, but people can decide for themselves at home, that the blast occurred outside the doors, which is kind of in keeping with Dana said. There was a confrontation outside, and then perhaps somebody detonated.
This is what you would call a horrifying benefit to heightened security. Terror works. As you close one hole, the terrorism, like water, will seek another one. So you can't. It's much harder to hijack a plane and take it down. We think that's true. So a lot of this stuff, I think, will be happening outside airport security, because you still have lots and lots of people there, and you could probably hurt as many or kill as many people there as you did with a small plane. So I think that this is just another area where you have to look at the entrances to terminals and start thinking about pushing the periphery of security further and further outward and encompass more territory. It's interesting, too, when you do see the response to something in which explosives are used, that it's immediately called a terrorist attack, as opposed to when something employs firearms, then it becomes a hate crime. What you're seeing as well is terrorists like ISIS have come out and said to stop targeting minority groups because they want it to be labeled terror and not a hate crime. That actually came out last week in their magazine.
Yeah, they care about their marketing.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this is this, and the way what I'm reading some of the Fox information here, it says that there's some security checkpoints inside the door. So clearly this attacker, call him a terrorist, call him homegrown, whatever you want to call him, saw that and decided to I guess there was a gunfight. He had a
Kalashnikov
rifle.
Open fire.
And there was a gunfight, and then he allegedly blew himself up. If you're going for maximum death, right? Destruction, terror.
Right.
Why not a bus station or a train station where there likely isn't? Now, you're going to have to basically harden every single place where people can gather for any reasons, for transportation, to party in a nightclub. Is every single place going to have armed security and metal detectors going forward? Is this? I mean, they're winning, guys. If this is what we're having, I'm just curious if this was a specific attack on the airport aspect of it, because it's international, whereas maybe a train station might be local.
So here's something else. Some of the details that are coming in. Turkish airports in particular have security checks at both the entrance of the terminal buildings and then later before entry in the departure gate. So it's a little bit more tricky because they actually have an extra roadblock to be able to get into that area where you can have mass casualties and larger numbers of potential fatalities or casualties. So I think that is pretty interesting. Also, another official from the Interior Department said that there were 2 attackers. So right now we don't know if it was one person that detonated or 2 attackers, somebody working in concert with another individual. They'll be able to get all that
in Brussels
from the forensic environment. Yes.
Remember in Brussels it was there were 2. There were 2 that were pushing the carts with the glove, and then they had the handler, or the guy that was basically like making sure that they were going to hit their targets. And remember, he gets out of there just before so that he can save himself. But the question that Eric's asking is, how much are we willing to put up with? It's kind of really been a question since 9/11, which is to say, of course, you cannot harden every target in the world, but how much are you willing to put up with in terms of civil liberties maybe being at a loss or inconvenience, and also the cost. And that's just a question that we'll probably never actually fully answer, but there could be cause for doing a little bit more. And then the train stations, the bus stations, etc. All of these places are really open to possible attack.
Well, you know, the difference in the United States, Dana, is that we, in terms of our Constitution, we have this tension between security and liberty for a long time. And so what they're having to do in Turkey is distinct to my mind, because Turkey is on the front of the battle lines, if you will, when it comes to confronting what's been going on in the Middle East. You know, Turkey right now is a candidate to join the European Union. And so it's, in a way, seen as modern. I know so many college students who have gone over to take a semester in Turkey to see that part of the world. It's seen as a divide between East and West, and so many of its beaches are just gorgeous places. So a lot of tourism. They are heavily reliant on tourism. This is not good news for them at the start of the summer season.
No, it's not.
But in terms of the terror threat that Dana was talking about, does it bring it home to the United States? Yes, we have to harden targets. But at the same time, we are a free people, and as such, I think we have to live with a degree of risk that I don't think the Turks would tolerate.
Well, but yeah, Greg, just to comment on this, I mean, Turkey has actually had several bombings in recent months, and some linked to you know, Kurdish fighters, and then others linked to Islamic State group militants. So they've been hit already hard recently, and then you have this coming upon the, you know, on the heels of it.
Yeah, and think about it. It could have been worse, because they actually do harden their soft targets because they're used to it. So it could have been worse than what you're seeing. The other thing, too, is I don't buy this polarization of security versus liberty. There are plenty of great books out there on hardening soft targets, and it shows you that security enhances liberty. It's never, it should not be this false argument that, well, if you have more police there, I'm going to have less freedom. No, it actually enables you to do more, to go on vacation, to go on trips.
With confidence.
Yeah, to walk into crowded areas and not think that that guy is going to kill you. I think we have to, in this new modern age, have to get over this false lie. Well, that's redundant. This false belief that with more security, your rights are being infringed, when in fact, as a free society, the only way a free society can survive is with protection, with security, because people hate us.
And you know who agrees with you? Israel.
Yeah.
Because they make sure to harden soft targets and make sure they have adequate security checks. They use profiling in an effective way to protect their citizens. That is their obligation and part of their national security, that they've been able to set up a model that works, you know, quite well, especially at airports, making sure who they let in, who's going to gain entry, et cetera. I mean, you know, we don't see this type of thing happen.
But I just disagree. I mean, Greg and I are disagreeing here, because I think that if someone has me under constant surveillance and I'm not accused of anything, I'm not suspected of anything, I'm thinking, why? I'm an American citizen. I mean, even now,
that's your interpretation of a man standing there with a gun who is protecting a sporting event. He's not looking at you. He's protecting you.
No. Well, in that case, I can agree with you. But I thought you were saying that we have to live with a greater degray of surveillance,
I think so.
Inspection. I mean, that if we go anywhere, you say, oh, yeah, I surrender my rights. You can search me. You can do a background check. I do. I give them that right, by the way, right now when I do go to the airport, because I want to get through the line quickly. So I say, yeah, here's my background information. I'm not a threat. But is that for someone who, you know, just wants to go to the airport and they don't want you to know everything about them?
They can take a separate train or a separate plane. Create transportation for people who don't care. You know what I mean?
I think on the plane that's been checked, everyone on it, or the one that nobody's been checked.
There's no lines. There's no lines in that security. I'm telling you.
Carry-ons are cool.
Juan is like, I'm getting on that.
I'm taking
not to make light of it, but honestly, there's a missing link here. There's a missing piece to this puzzle, because if you're carrying, let's say this was a suicide vest or some sort of explosive device, willing to kill yourself, and a high-powered weapon with a lot of rounds, and are willing to go into a gunfight and then blow yourself up to kill a bunch of people, there are so many other places that you can do it with more than killing. As Greg points out, we're lucky if there's only 10 here. Sporting events, concerts,
That's not giving any ideas.
No, I know.
But believe me, they're smarter. They've thought this through.
This is a spectacle.
A crowded square in an afternoon.
It affects transportation, tourism.
So but is it just? I got to tell you,
and it
an airport
creates fear
scares the
and
heck out of me.
panic and instability.
But so
that's
would
what they
Times
like.
Square,
Wow.
or so would the Turkish version of Times Square too. So I don't know. I just let's.
It's a piece
there's
of
something else.
It's a piece of a terror puzzle where they can go ahead and do something like this, and yes, it occupies the news. And you see that there were 2 explosions that occurred here, so 2 detonations.